Hello everybody, this is Garrett and you're watching 11 Bang Bang. A few months ago I sat down and I did a list of my personal top 6 firearms of the early 19th century, dating basically from 1800 to 1860. Today we're going to do the second part of that. We're going to do my favorite firearms from the late 19th century, basically from the Civil War on through to 1900. There are a few rules that apply here. Number one, these are just my opinion, so if you disagree, feel free to write your list in the comments section. And number two, these have to be guns that I have had personal experience with. Hence the Sharps rifle, which I would love to put on here for its history. I haven't had a lot of experience with that action, so for now it's going to have to remain off the list. The next honorable mention is going to be the Spencer carbine, although I have one on the wall right there above my head right now. Since I haven't been able to find a conversion block for it yet, I haven't been able to shoot it. We're not doing a lot of the main Civil War firearms. That will also be a list of its own someday, so don't expect to see the Enfield or the 61, 63, or 64 Springfield on this list. They deserve their own list. So, without further ado, let's get on with it. Coming in at number 6 on my list, just barely making the cut, above the Spencer, because as I said, I have not shot the Spencer, but I have shot a replica of an 1860 Henry. So, as I said before, this is not mainly Civil War firearms, but this was not just a Civil War firearm. It was used all over the West, all over the country, as a matter of fact, and it was the first of the true repeating lever-action Winchesters. And with its 44 Henry cartridge and its large capacity magazine tube, it did make a dent, shall we say. Lots of civilian scouts in the Indian Wars carried them. Although it was a short-range weapon, it did have consistent repeating firepower. Although outpowered by the Spencer, it did its job at moderate ranges, putting it at number 6 on this list. Coming in at number 5 on this list, we have the Scofield, the Smith & Wesson model of 1875, whatever you want to call it. Basically, this is an improvement over Smith & Wesson's older Model 3 revolver. Basically, what it did was allowed cavalry troops to unload their firearm with one hand by using the Scofield latch. Other than that, it's basically just a Model 3. And the Model 3 in of itself is a great revolver and was used pretty heavily by civilians in the earlier 1870s, beating the 1873 to market by nearly 4 years. However, the improvement to the Scofield model we're talking about today in 1875 puts the Scofield just slightly above the Model 3 in my opinion and makes it number 5 on this list. Number 4 on this list, the second Allen conversion, the second model Allen conversion, otherwise known as the 1866 Springfield. This big bore 50-70 long 3-band rifle was used to great effect at the Hayfield fight and the Wagon Box fight, first coming into service and being used in 1867 by the military. However, it would only be on the military for a couple years before it would be replaced by the model of 1868. And with the military switching over to the model 1868, about half of the original 1866s would go to France for the Franco-Prussian War, and the other half would wind up, a lot of them, on the civilian market. And later on, those French guns, most of them would come back into the country onto the civilian market, which means that in the early 1870s, if you are looking for a big bore buffalo rifle, you're very likely to find a lot of people walking around with a cut down Bannerman 1866, or maybe even one from Sears and Roebuck. These guns were great buffalo killing guns, chambered in the big powerful 50-70 round, and with fairly rapid fire, or what was considered fairly rapid fire for the early 1870s by using a breech loading gun when a lot of people still were carrying muzzleloaders. This gave many people just a slight edge, carrying great range and great hitting power. That puts it at number 4 on this list. Coming in at number 3, we once again, surprisingly, have another Smith & Wesson. This is the Smith & Wesson Model 3 double action, and one of the reasons I absolutely love this gun is because, honestly, with its speed of reload, it could beat out the Colt Model 1878, which was still a gate loader, even though it was big bore. And you could load this gun very quickly and fire it rapidly, making it a real game changer if you were to be out in the street in a gunfight, should that happen to you. This gun was really signaling the beginning of the modern era, coming around in the early 1880s, long before Colt would get their swing-out cylinder out in 1889. If you pair this revolver with an 1880s speed loader, yes, they did exist, you can really have some massive amount of firepower on tap all the time. Alright, now we're getting down to my top 2 favorites of all time, and you probably aren't going to be surprised by these. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Number 2, the 1873 Winchester. Although many times in the West it takes many years for a gun to catch on and really take off, I can find pictures from about 1874 onward of just 1873 after 1873. The gun got here fast. It was well loved and well used, and after that, if you're going to see a gun in a picture, almost always going to see a rifle 1873 in pictures after the year of 1874. They took over fast, people loved them, and they were and really are one of the most beloved and well-built, rugged, reliable weapons of the 19th century. And coming in at number 1, you all knew exactly what it was going to be. This is the Colt Model of 1873, otherwise known as the Single Action Army. This revolver, although probably not the most popular revolver in all reality in the West, many little 32 and 38 double action Smith & Wessons out there, and Ivor Johnsons and other guns coming out in the 1880s and 1890s. This is the big boy. This is the stopping power. This is the one, and yes, stopping power was a thing. This is the one that people used. In reality, unless you were to go back and get a Walker, which is even debatable whether or not the Walker is more powerful than the 40 grain charged 45 Colt round that has a 255 grain projectile. The Walker never fired anything close to as heavy as a 255 grain projectile, and if you put it in there you wouldn't have been able to get 60 grains in there ever. So in reality, the Walker and the Single Action Army with a 7.5 inch barrel are actually relatively close in power, and definitely in the cartridge era this is one of the more powerful guns on the western frontier, if not the most powerful as far as handguns are concerned. With a full 40 grain charge, it really was, as Elmer Keith would say, bear medicine. And this gun would carry on clear into the 1940s, but it fits this list because it's known for, and the majority of its use came in the late 19th century. So what did you think of the list? If you disagree, feel free to comment down below with your own list. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, trust in God, keep your powder dry. Bye.